And here to speak for the Conservatives this morning, as so often, is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Many times on this show. Chris, can we just start with your reaction to the news overnight from Berlin?
Good morning, Trevor. Well, it's horrifying that once again in Germany we see innocent people, in this case at a Pride march, but it's happened at Christmas markets and so on as well, being mown down by a vehicle. Injuries, I think at least one fatality, maybe more. Truly terrible and shocking. Police have said they're looking for a man with Islamist links. So once again, deeply concerning that Germany has been hit with Islamist terrorism, it would appear from the German police's early reports.
Well, we don't want to presume too much, but thank you for that. One other piece of news which is emerging this morning, which is that in another place, Andy Burnham has ruled out an early election. You must be relieved.
Well, first of all, we are completely ready for an election whenever it comes. Bring on the fight, as far as I'm concerned. I would take his claim...
You're 6 points down on both Reform and Labour Party.
Well, I mean, the most recent polls are pretty close to a three-way tie, if you look at the margin of error within opinion polls. So bring it on, as far as I'm concerned. We're ready for the fight. I would take his claim with a little pinch of salt, though, because Andy Burnham is a political opportunist, as we have recently seen, and as Keir Starmer has rather painfully discovered. So if Andy Burnham gets a sniff that he might do OK, I'm pretty sure this ruling out an election would rather rapidly get reversed. So I would say watch this space when it comes to opportunist Andy.
When you say political opportunist, I mean, that's what we used to call a tautology, isn't it? I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable thing for him to decide that he wants to have an election if he thinks he can win it.
Well, I mean, he's saying he won't have an election. I'm saying the truth is he probably would if he thought it would suit him. And he certainly lost no time in sticking the knife into poor old Keir Starmer. That was certainly an act of political opportunism, if ever I saw one.
All right, well, the issue of prisons has been much on everybody's mind this week. You left this government with a quandary, what to do about overcrowded prisons, and you, to some extent, inherited it as well. Do you think they were right to implement the early release programme and right to pause it?
Well, they were certainly not right to legislate for it in the way they did. When this bill was going through Parliament a few months ago, we Conservatives warned time and time again that the way they had framed it would result in rapists getting let out early. It would result in people who had been grooming gang perpetrators getting let out early, and grooming gang, rape gang victims are now saying they are terrified to leave their house for fear that their perpetrator will get released back onto the streets early. We warned about all of this when the bill was going through Parliament, but the Labour government ignored us. And they were certainly wrong to do that, no question.
Well, that's all very well, but of course the alternative is overcrowded prisons. And we were looking at a graph earlier on, we may be able to sum it up again, about the rise in violence in prisons, really commensurate or correlated with the overcrowding. And we're seeing assaults between prisoners up by, 40%, assaults on staff up by another 40%. Surely you've got to do something. So what would you do if you wouldn't implement the early release programme in the way they want?
Yeah, well, they've got about, I believe, something like 3,000 spare places at the moment. I would certainly be favouring...
Yeah, that's not going to last through September.
But I would certainly favour rapidly building more prison spaces, if necessary, using prefabricated units. I remember visiting a prison, must have been 3 or 4 years ago now, I think it was Huntercombe in Oxfordshire, which was a foreign national offender prison, where they had got these rapidly deployable prefabricated cell units built within the secure perimeter. There are things like that the government could and should look at doing, rather than letting rapists out early. On your question about overcrowding
and
violence...
about porter cabins, and there's security issues about
I wouldn't use the word... They're not porter cabins, and they are within the secure perimeter. But and they are being used at the moment, right? This is not a fanciful idea. I've seen it with my own eyes in a prison, the one that I just mentioned from memory. Now, on your question about violence in prisons, that is a really serious issue. But I think you may be mistaking correlation with causality. I don't think necessarily the number of people in prison is a driver of prison violence, but lax security regimes certainly are. Letting prisoners use mobile phones to organise crime outside certainly is. Not being tough with extremists in prison might well be a cause of violence. So I think being a lot tougher with the regime in prisons
seriously
is
believe
a better
that there's
approach.
no relationship between overcrowding and the amount of violence between prisoners and violence by prisoners on staff. You can't seriously believe that.
I've just said there are currently, I believe, about 2,000 or 3,000 spare prison places. So on the government's own assessment of the prison estate's capacity, they are currently under that capacity. So by definition, they're not currently overcrowded because they're running under the current maximum capacity by a couple of thousand.
That's a national figure, but some prison places are always going to be out of operation because there's leaks in the roof or because there's some security issue. Some places you've got to move prisoners into a certain geography and so on. So it isn't going to be... because you've got 3,000 in the system, doesn't mean that there won't be overcrowding. So let me put it to you again. Are you seriously saying that you don't think that there's a relationship between the sharp rise in violence over the last 5 or 6 years and the degree of overcrowding?
Well, I mean, to repeat the point, there are spare prison places in the system. Prisoners can, of course, be moved around within the prison estate. I think a far more important consideration when it comes to behaviour in prisons is the toughness of the regime. There are drugs that are rife in prison. Prisoners are taking drugs the whole time, being smuggled in by drones, in body cavities, goodness knows what else. Prisoners are running criminal enterprises from within prison, particularly Albanians, but others as well, using illicit mobile phones. You've got extremists, including Islamist extremists, having influence and intimidating other prisoners within the prison estate, which is well documented. These are the kind of problems, those that I've just mentioned, are the main things driving prison violence, rather than the number of free prison spaces. And I think the government needs to urgently grip those. As well as building more prison places, of course.
Kemi Badenoch says you can't be a Conservative candidate for Parliament unless you back withdrawal from the European Convention on Human Rights and repudiate the net zero target brought in by Theresa May. When did the Stalinists take over the Conservative Party?
Well, I wouldn't say that is Stalinist. Look, I think there are some issues.
Yeah,
Trevor, hang on. There are some. Let me answer the question.
Church that used to be the Conservative Party.
Let me answer the question. There are some issues that are so important and so fundamental to our political programme that they are not negotiable. And leaving the ECHR, reforming welfare is another, and net zero are so foundational, we can't have any Conservative candidate or MP at the next election not supporting those, because otherwise the public might elect a Conservative majority. I hope they do. I expect they will elect a Conservative majority. But imagine it's only a small majority, 20 or 30. If our programme in government was then not delivered because a handful of Conservative MPs wouldn't back it, the public would be rightly disappointed. And that is why, let me finish, on these very fundamental issues, leaving the ECHR, stopping net zero and welfare reform, it's not negotiable. The public have to be certain that when they elect a Conservative MP and a Conservative government, we're going to deliver what we say.
Yeah, but this is not theoretical. I looked up the membership of what's called the Conservative Environment Network. There are many MPs who are members of that, and it backs net zero. It includes shadow cabinet members James Cartledge, Helen Whately, Victoria Atkins, Mims Davis and Rebecca Harris, and the chairman of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollingray. On what you've just said, all of them are going to be looking for new jobs.
Well, I don't think that's true because...
either it's true or it's not true. Either you're stacking them or you're not.
Well, I think that all those people you just mentioned, who are shadow cabinet colleagues, I've sat in a room with them in the last few weeks or months, and they've unequivocally supported the policy programme.
They better get their names off the website of the Conservative Environment Network, shouldn't they?
Well, I don't know what the policies of the Conservative Environment Network are, or indeed how historic...
I'm telling you, to support net zero.
I mean, it's probably rather historic. I'm not familiar with the group.
No, I looked it up yesterday.
Okay,
it's not historic.
I don't know how historic their policies are, but I do know that all the people whose names you just mentioned, I've sat around the shadow cabinet table with in the last few weeks, and we have all together unequivocally supported the three policies that we just mentioned.
You are keen to emphasise that this is a new Conservative Party. Some people would say, yeah, it's a new Conservative Party. And some people would say...
And by the way, isn't Kemi doing well?
And other people would say, why don't you call yourselves...
You avoided the question.
Why? Because this is an interview. My job to ask the question, yours to answer them. And my question is this a Conservative Party or is it Reform Light?
No, we're a completely different party to Reform. We have serious and credible policies. We think things through before we say them. And when we announce a policy, the public know it's been properly thought out. I'm afraid to say that is not the case with reform. They have, great slogans, I'll give them that, but they don't have serious, credible policies that have been thought through, and nor is the Conservative Party embroiled in various financial scandals. None of us have taken a £5 million personal gift from a Thailand-based crypto billionaire, and none of us rely on a convicted fraudster as our right-hand man, which appears to be the case with this George Cottrell
I
character.
gave you a couple of free hits there, but I'm now going to, speaking of slogans, take back control of this interview. Thank you very much, Chris
Thank you,
Philp.
Trevor.